devour one another, to use one another, to eat one another to their souls. And when we worship, who we worship matters so intimately in this context, because who we worship shapes who we become. What we worship shapes who we become. What we take in and glorify shapes who we become. But God will let you choose. That's the thing. And sometimes we choose a lie because we think the lie serves us better. But the longer that we live in that lie, the longer it destroys us. And that's why God gives us this severe warning. Because God takes it very seriously how we treat one another. See, some of you are actually straight in this room, sexually, and have core identity issues that have affected your sexuality. See, in our context, so often we've given up on love and we simply replace it with sex. In fact, studies have shown time after again that millennials have given up on this idea of marriage and children because they've watched their parents blow marriage out the nose and have no desire to want to be in that context ever again. And so we're living in a society where we don't want to make any commitment with one another, so we just sleep with one another to replace that. So that there's no commitment that actually has to be broken in that context. I was having a conversation with a young man the other day, and he was saying, oh, no, I just sleep with women. I don't make commitments to them. That way, there's nothing to be broken on the other side. And this is the ongoing cultural conversation is, I'm not actually going to make a commitment to another human being because I don't want to find myself on the other side of a broken promise, like my mom, like my dad, like the people who let me down before me. See, that's a nice idea. It only works if we didn't live in a moral universe. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is not committing has even stronger moral ramifications to it.
Right.
It actually leaves us empty. See, we find ourselves confused about what love is. Well, you've probably heard about the three types of love. Of phileo love, the love between brothers and loved ones, the agape love between us and God, and then eros love, the love between a man and a woman. See, the problem is that we've actually lost our ability to have authentic phileo love between one another, and so we simply replace it with sex. We've given up on God, agape love, and we've run away from the idea that someone could actually love us unconditionally for who we are. And so we run to erotic love to make up for the love that is missing in every other context in our lives. And so people have endless one-night stands. Start using one another, because at least we can feel love, because we don't feel love in this context. And we start using each other's bodies to make up for the deficiency rather than to express a commitment.
Wow.
I talk to young people all the time that ask me, who should I marry? Who should I marry? And you know my answer is? Someone that you can talk to all night long without having sex. Because you know what I found in my 3 short years of marriage? We do a lot more talking than we do sex. Now that's just the way it is. Sorry, single folks in the room who have this other idea about what marriage works like. But here's the thing, is that intimacy is actually created through conversation. Through connection with one another. See, we circumvent the intimacy process for sex, and it's all over our language. We even say, I'm going to buy intimate wear. See, intimate wear is not wear that helps you have deeper conversations. Intimate wear is simply what reveals our physical body for us. See, intimacy requires us revealing our soul, talking, listening to one another. It's why guys love taking girls to the movies on dates. Because you can just sit there and watch a screen and then go home. There's no intimacy required in that. Young ladies, if your boyfriend moves you towards sex, what he's saying is you're boring. See, because he can talk all day with the guys about the game, but the second with you, he just wants sex. Guys, if she's pushing you towards sex, she's saying that you're boring. Because she can talk to you all day about her friends. She can talk to you her friends all day about what's going on around the world. But strangely enough, when we're with one another, we just can't talk. Because you can't be alone without having sex. So if you find yourself sexually active outside the context of marriage, you have to ask yourself, why am I so boring? Or why is this person so boring.
Make it plain.
That we can't actually have intimacy with one another.
Wow.
See, if you cannot stay committed to wait until a vow is made, I can guarantee that you will bring that same attitude of entitlement into a marriage. And it'll just be with another man or porn or another addiction that comes along with that.
Jesus.
See, I met people all the time. I just had a young man on my sofa on Friday nights who broke up with his girlfriend, and I can instantly tell when they've been sexually active with one another. Because there is a breaking of the soul that takes place. See, because like the scriptures say here, is that when you connect to one another, your souls unite. And then when you move from that, you've made a commitment with your bodies that your soul was not able to follow up on.
Right.
Wow.
See, this is why the scriptures make it pretty clear that sex is the best. It's only in the context of a married commitment.
Right.
It's the ultimate expressions of two lives committed to intimacy and transparency, and it represents the unity with Christ, where their souls are connected. And God rarely says, do not do this, just because he's trying to take all the joy out of life. Sometimes, I gotta be honest, sometimes when I read through the scripture, I'm like, God, why did you? It almost seems like you took all the fun stuff in life and said, don't do this, right? I mean, he doesn't say, like, don't eat broccoli, right? That would be like, cool. It's almost like all the stuff that's pleasurable and enjoy. It's like, why all this? Because he's trying to get us to recognize the larger context for life and relationship.
Right.
To step into something far more beautiful. And then this leads us to probably the more controversial and difficult conversation. See, because what I see in the scriptures, there's actually no context where homosexuality is designed as a healthy context for relationship within the scriptures. And it's difficult to have this conversation for a number of reasons. One is I have a lot of gay friends I love that are intimately connected to my life. But you know what I found that when we have this conversation is that oftentimes those people, when they find out what I believe about sexuality, don't want to be my friend. But the strange thing is that I'm not actually forcing them to become a follower of Jesus to be my friend. See, I actually find myself strangely in a context where I am more open-minded about the relationship than they are. And it's confusing when we place ourselves there. See, no matter whether you're gay or straight, it is an unhealthy place to be identified by who you have sex with. It's just an unhealthy place to step into. See, I don't walk around going, hi, I'm Nathan, the heterosexual. That's not like a core identity to me. See, but the thing is, we like to create layers around ourselves saying, you must accept me this way. I'm the gay one. I'm the white one. I'm the black one. I'm the smart one. I'm the ugly one. I'm the fat one. I'm the thin one. We like to create labels around ourselves to protect us from one another. See, and whenever we identify ourselves by something secondary to our character and our hearts, we move towards darkness and hopelessness.
That's good.
See, because God defines you by your heart and who he's called you to be. He does not define you by any other characteristics. See, we ask this question, and I wrestle with this question over and over. It's like, if this is true, why would God make so many gay people? And so many gay people in my life that I love that are beautiful. It's interesting because Gallup did a poll of the United States asking people what percentage they thought of the population of the United States was gay or lesbian. And the answers came back anywhere between 21 to 22%. That's what the perception is. But when the U.S. Census was taken, it found that only 1 to 3% of the population identify as gay, and only 2 to 3% identify themselves as lesbians. So that means that only 2.5% of our community finds themselves in this context, and yet it is a huge issue of our day. Because the fact of the matter is that we're all struggling with our identity in some way, shape, or form. And this is just the latest that we struggle with in this context. And oftentimes the argument comes up of, well, I'm born gay. I have no choice in the matter. You know, psychology and sociology has actually found that we're actually not born gay. We're actually not born straight. Psychology has actually found that we become sexually aware at anywhere between 6 to 8 years old. And it's actually why we can nurse at a young age and not have it be a sexual experience. Because we don't come out of the womb with a sexual context in that. And see, our sexual identity develops in these pivotal years growing up of 6 to 8. And what psychology and sociology is finding out more and more often is that our identity and our sexuality is far more fluid than we could ever imagine. That we can actually become sexually attracted to almost anything when we move down that line. That your development, that who you are, can move your attraction in a spectrum. That you cannot define yourself by who you are sexually attracted to. Being human is far more profound than that. And by the way, just because you're born with an inclination doesn't mean that you need to follow it.
All right.
See, I have friends, and I have friends that are born inclined towards alcoholism.
Right.
And I would never encourage them saying, well, you're just born that way. I have friends that are inclined towards suicide and depression on a daily basis. And I would never say, well, you are born that way, so there's no hope for you in that context. You know, there's another argument that says, well, this takes place all over nature. You see this in biology, you see this in DNA. There are pigs that are gay, and there are certain birds in Africa or frogs that find themselves in gay relationship. And I actually have a strong concern for the gay community when they use this conversation. Because we don't ever want to let nature be our standard for how we are to live as human beings.
Amen.
See, because there are certain lions that eat their young. Praying mantises, the females bite the head off the male during sex. See, I don't think we want to start looking toward nature to define how we are to treat one another in the context of sexuality.
Right.
Yes, there are patterns out there, but those patterns are outliers. And one of the laws of evolution that actually holds up is the law of natural selection, survival of the fittest. That the strongest actually survive. And if we're going to say that in nature, this homosexual drive shows up, so we should use it as us, what we're actually saying is that those who are gay are eventually destined for extinction, because they will never be able to reproduce themselves. See, I actually think it would be cruel of God to create a type of human being that was destined for extinction. When I look at my friends who identify as gay or lesbian, my heart breaks because I think God did not destine you for extinction. God did not create a type of human being that would no longer be on the planet eventually.
Right.
Because of that, God would not assure that a line of human beings, that their bloodline would no longer continue.
That's amazing.
And people give the argument, well, aren't there couples that are infertile? Yes, but we know that that's an anomaly. We know that that goes against the human body's design. See, you have infinite value to God. And your sexuality should never be a declaration that you are destined for extinction. See, and here is my dilemma that I find in this conversation, is that I have come across hateful heterosexual Christians. And I've come across loving homosexuals who are far away from God. And so I find myself in this strange space, and I feel like we've almost lost our voice in how we've handled this conversation. Because while we have truth about what God says, truth must be coupled with grace. Grace doesn't necessarily mean I accept what you believe, but it means that I love you. And I'm willing to walk with you regardless of what takes place in your life. See, Psalms 37:4 says, delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. See, the thing is that as you draw near to God, God transforms the desires of your heart.
That's good.
He is not judgmental towards the desires of your heart. He transforms them. See, I wouldn't believe in all of this had I not met Jesus, because I know my own brokenness. The fact of the matter is, in Christianity, we've almost set up this standard, well, there's this whole group over there whose sexuality is broken, and then there's the rest of us. But the fact of the matter is that every single one of us are brought into this world with a broken sexuality.
Oh, you need to preach that.
I do need to preach that. Every single one of us are brought into this world with a broken sexuality. Because let's be honest, straight guys in the room, we're more inclined to have multiple partners, aren't we? We're more inclined to take a second glance. But that doesn't mean that's how God designed us. Right?
Right.
See, here's the thing. All of us are in need of having our sexuality transformed by a God who is bringing us into alignment with his love. And this is where he asks us. We have to ask ourselves, are we simply using people? Or are we giving back to them? Have we replaced intimacy with sex? Have we confused friendship and love with lust and desire? Are we able to master our desires, or do our desires have mastery over us? See, the universe says this. It says you were created for a relationship. That's what God wrote into the fabric of the universe, is that you were created for the relationship, and how you are connected to others matters. And so what we say about this, and what God says about this particularly, is critical. And it isn't nearly as important as to what it says about God. See, if I say God created me gay, and he says that means that I somehow can't love the person I love. It means that God created me with desires that I can't control and that are beyond me. But the fact of the matter is that we connect to a God who is not maleficent. He did not create people with certain desires and say, suffer through life. He created people who stepped into a broken and fragmented humanity, and he's not punishing you. He is attempting to woo you into connection with him so that he can transform who you are. And when we move towards him, he shaped us. And this is what I love about heaven, is that heaven is not just a destination that we go to. It's a state of being that we step into when we are connected to him. And in heaven, he makes all things new.
Right. Yes.
Including our sexuality. See, we have this idea that when we come to Jesus, that our struggles should be over. But the fact of the matter is that when we come to Jesus, our struggles just begin, because he's starting to realign us to the relationship that he designed us to live into.
Right. That's right.
This is why he says, look, don't just get rid of your struggles, honor him with your struggles. And he says that somewhere along the line, we weren't supposed to struggle for what's true, what's noble, what's right. That they were just supposed to come to us. But this is where we find ourselves to win the prize. This is such a critical conversation in our culture today. I know so many times the church feels so ill-equipped, and so we lash out in hate. Or sometimes the church feels like the dominant conversation of people of faith has been fueled by hate, and so we say nothing. But I say it's time that we as believers in Jesus take back the conversation. We take back the conversation. And that conversation is fueled by love. It is fueled by love. Because there is not a gay or straight person on the planet that God isn't madly in love with and wooing right now. And if we see them as their core identity as a future child or daughter or son of God, then everything changes. Let's bring truth with grace. And let's allow him to transform our sexuality together with him. Let me pray for us. Father, I thank you that you did not leave us in an empty space when it comes to our own desires. God, we all struggle. The fact of the matter is that you created something so beautiful between Adam and Eve that was to be shared between a man and a woman, and it just got broken with sin, God. That you created something so intimate and powerful and beautiful, and that it was just shattered with the fall, God. Would you help all of us to recognize our own need for transformation in this area, God? And would you help us to recognize the truth that you've aligned in the universe, how to relate to one another, God? God, I pray that you would give us grace with that truth, that you would give us love as we speak boldly into this conversation, God. May our lips be filled with your Spirit as we have conversations with both those who are straight and struggling with their passions, and those who are struggling with who they're attracted to, God. May you make us testimonies to the love and the relationship that you want us to have, Father. In Jesus' name, amen.